is Tori Melizzi, and this is my student choice video. The work that I chose was Bayou by Jeremy Love. It started out as a webcomic. You could have found it on Zuda.comics.com. Unfortunately, it is no longer free online and is only available in the print version. I chose to do Volume 1, but it is Volume 2 as well, which if you want like the whole shebang, Volume 2 is very good. I didn't buy it because it's a little expensive, but so Bayou focuses on the story of Lee Westad and her journey to save her friend Lily, who was swallowed by a creature in the bayou, but in turn also save her father, who has been accused of kidnapping and then murdering Lily. So he's going to face that sort of justice. The themes of this comic are kind of different than what you usually read in the class. It is called like Southern folklore. It's a fantasy fiction narrative. It kind of is like half takes place in a rural town in Mississippi called Charon, which is actually not a real place. It takes place in 1933. But then the other half of the narrative takes place in a land called Dixie, which is a fantasy land which Lee travels through, which is where Lily has been taken. So it's very different, but I think the style is very effective. So the thing that I would like to show you first is the first 3 images of the narrative. I feel like they kind of set up the story and give you a really interesting view, even though that there are no dialogue, no real like narration or anything. There are a couple words, but so the first image, skipping title page of course, is this one right here. As you can see, it is a cotton field, and which is a representation of like slavery, as people may know. And these are trees that kind of look like trees that you would find in Africa. So this kind of shows the past. The people brought from Africa to the fields of cotton to be slaves in the United States, and then there's kind of like a dark like house or barn or something in the different distance, which I think kind of alludes to the dark nature of this narrative. The second page gives you setting. You see a truck driving into a town called Charon, Mississippi. I'm on my frontal camera, so it's going to be backwards. That gives you a frame of reference, though, so you're driving into the town, so you're inside. Down here it just says the year, which is 1933. And then you have like the group of rabbits, which I think is actually really interesting, because you have 3 white rabbits and then 1 brown rabbit. And it kind of, I think, sets the tone for the racial inequalities and everything that you're going to see in this narrative. The last, first image, I'm going to split up into 2 parts because it's kind of like a double panel. First, you have the sign that says colored entrance with a crow on top. Jim Crows actually play a symbolic reference in the narrative, as later on a flock of crows, eats a person. They're called Jim Crows. So I think that's an interesting reflection to later on in the narrative, but also to the Jim Crow laws that took place in the South. And then the next image, which I think is very, very powerful, is a white crowd standing and staring at the feet of what we later learn is to be a black boy named Billy Glass. And then the butterflies, which you see kind of flying around, are actually important as well, because anytime Lee encounters the fantasy realm of Dixie, there are butterflies present. It's kind of like an allusion to the other realm, and it's also important because you later see Billy Glass with butterfly wings as his spirit, kind of flies away. So butterflies are a symbolic role. So kind of a brief summary of the narrative. It's kind of hard for me to do a brief summary because I really like it and I kind of want to go in depth. But basically you have Lee and her father. They're sharecroppers on a land that Lily's mother owns, so they're kind of like all together. And they're working hard, and it shows that their life is, hard, but there's like a lot of love between them. The story starts in the bayou, where Lily has to go in and find the body of Billy Glass, and to earn $3. The bayou plays a very significant role, hence the name. Her mother was killed by the bayou, Lily gets eaten in a bayou, which I will expand upon. So basically one day her and Lily are playing, and Lily wants to go down to the bayou where her necklace gets stolen, a family heirloom. She then blames the necklace, the loss of the necklace on Lee, because Lily doesn't want to get beaten by her mother. Lee then has to work off this payment. Later, Lily goes back to look for the necklace and gets swallowed by a creature that we later learn named is Bog, this big white hulking man. And Lee sees that, and Lee's father gets blamed for kidnapping and murdering Lily, and he gets taken away. In the process of him getting taken to jail, Lee is almost killed, getting hit in the head with a shotgun. She's not shot, she's just hit in the head pretty hard. She wakes up in her aunt's house, and then proceeds to go and find her father in the next town over. And in the town, she learns that the only way her father will be released and not, hung, is if Lily is found alive and well. And so she does the only thing that she thinks she can and goes and searches for Lily in the bayou. And it says here, right on the back, that the bayou is a bad place. Ain't nothing good ever come from the bayou. And so it kind of, she goes into the one place that she fears the most. And in the bayou, she almost gets killed by some sprite creature. And she gets saved by this character named Bayou, lo and behold. And Bayou is kind of like the stereotypical, what you would, his image, while he's green and big. Let me see if I can find a picture for you. He is kind of like what you would consider to be stereotypical character in slave fiction or anything like that. He's big, he's burly, he's kind of portrayed as a little dumb and kind of a coward all the time. While he has the power to fight back, as Lee says, he doesn't ever use it until later on when Lee encourages him. His speech patterns are also very broken and kind of scattered, and he talks in the third person often, always calling himself Bayou and never I. So that, I think, is very interesting, and it kind of brings the reality to the land of Dixie, which you later learn through symbolism and everything is a representation of the slave South. Lee almost dies. Bayou then saves her, much to which he repeats over and over again that his master will not like that. But he saves her life, and because apparently the last time he did something, he was beaten and whipped. He saves her life, and then he tells her that Lily is in the house of Bog, his master's son, General Bog, and the only way, and that she won't be able to save her, because Bog is evil and he does despicable things to people, and later you find his house is full of skeletons. It's kind of creepy. But Lily, being the girl that she is, goes anyway after she encounters the spirit of Billy Glass, once again telling her that she's going to die either way, so she might as well do something. She goes and she beats up Bog. Bog almost kills her, and Bayou comes to the rescue, of course, and then they're all attacked by a flock of Jim Crows, which kills Bog and takes Lily away, who is alive inside of Bog's belly. Now, she's gone. Then they are confronted by a mob of people who apparently work for Master Bog, General Bog, and they whip Bayou, much like, a slave narrative. And then Bayou finally fights back, according to help save Lee. And then the story ends with both Bayou and Lee on the run, hunting for Lily and running from the people who are going to come back for retribution. And that is the end of Volume 1. I'm going to show you a couple of important pages that I think are, important for the whole story. The first one is at the very beginning when Lee is jumping into the bayou. She comes across the body of Billy Glass, whom you later learn, you never learn in the story, but if you go to the back pages, you find this image in which you see Billy Glass drawn with his butterfly wings as his spirit, and then his name is Emmett. This is a relation to Emmett Till, who was brutally murdered for whistling at a white woman, which is the same reason Billy Glass was killed in Mississippi, and I believe 1966. And that same story is represented here in Bayou. Look up that story, it's kind of terrifying. And then another really important image, which you find about halfway through, is this. While she's traveling to find her father, you're reading a news story written about it, which talks about the history of the town Charon, who apparently was under the protection of General Bog during the Civil War, who he fought on the side of slavery and the Confederates. It talks about, how it's terrible that this burly, sinewy, ape-like man, devoid of humanity and feeling, killed and kidnapped little Lily, a poor, innocent white girl. And then it ends with the paragraph, which I'm going to read to you, because I think it's really important. To this writer, it illustrates the wisdom of our forefathers, who foresaw this as a type of lawlessness in the wake of the fall of Southern culture. We can only pray that the surge of white anger does not boil over and seek to reclaim the glory of our slain ancestors. So General Bog was, the champion, and they're like, oh no. It's very, very interesting because he's, in the fantasy realm as well. And then one last image I would like to show is when Bayou is getting whipped. You see this quick image of what appears to be part of the slave trade. You get a couple of these images throughout the story when, according to Bayou, when you're in his thoughts. He once envisions Lee when she's being strong and, courageous, dressed in, traditional African garb, as, a direct relation to, assume that Bayou was part of the slave trade. It's kind of a really interesting illusion there. So the reason, there's no way to say that this doesn't pertain to civil rights, as it deals directly with, sharecropping, but then the Southern South and the Jim Crow laws, but then also with slavery in, the fantasy realm. I also think that, the fantasy helps a lot with the story. I feel like sometimes we have become desensitized to the story of slavery because we study it a lot, and seeing it put into a different lens with the exact same images and ideas is it's kind of terrifying. There is one page where after Lee sees Lily getting eaten, she runs back through the bayou. And the bayou, again, is the land where Dixie and the world cross over. And you see her running, and it's kind of bright red and terrifying. There's butterflies everywhere. And then you see this image. Butterflies, again, like I said, a symbol of Dixie. But all these people are hanging, which unfortunately is not a fantasy. So the blend of the two worlds kind of brings a terrifying reality to the story. And then, so the last thing I did for Bayou was, because it's not very critically acclaimed, like I said, it was a webcomic before, it doesn't have a big following or anything, so I looked up a couple of, reviews, and then it had something on Publisher Weekly, which I really liked the way they described it, as Southern folklore comes to life in the disturbing echoes of our world, which again kind of relates back to this idea that while it's not Mississippi and it's not where we think it is, everything that happens in the land of Dixie is an echo of things that happened in Slave South here. So definitely a good read. I would suggest it for a little bit older audiences, not necessarily for the content, but for the symbolism and things I think would be better suited for an older audience. But I think it'd be a very good addition to this class.